just thought I would do a minute silence reflection there in front of the War Memorial. It's kind of funny that this time of year is not only we're coming into the dark, but it's definitely a time for the dead, because we have had Halloween and the Day of the Dead, and then here in the UK we've just had Remembrance Sunday. Just look at the fruits on this yew. It's funny, I was always a yew tree in the in a graveyard. I've come to this graveyard again. I've just had a nice walk and just finishing off on the way home. And over there they're felling some trees, which I don't really like, but I think it's to do with woodland management. It's nice to come round here. It's a bit strange that I'm empty-handed. I have no dog with me anymore. He passed away about 12 weeks ago now. But I thought I'd come on to do a reflection about the dead, seeing we are in the place of the dead here. And it's definitely a time, late October, November to me is definitely the months of the dead. And then December to me kind of is about embracing the anticipation of a returning light. But we, in the UK, we had Remembrance Sunday, where we honour on the 11th of the 11th the ending of the First and Second World War. I mean, it was really the First World War and the atrocities of war, but the remembrance incorporates everything, every aspect of wars since the First World War. And it's just awful that with civilization seems to come war. Or can we actually call it civilization if there are wars? I mean, when we lived in the Upper Paleolithic and Mesolithic, and we were hunter-gatherers, I mean, there were fewer of us, but there weren't, as far as I know, wars. There's no evidence of wars. And there was greater respect for the land as well, and that's sadly gone. But Remembrance Sunday is nice because it's kind of like, it's a way of honouring the dead. And in the UK we have a musical celebration for it at one of the big halls in London, which is televised nationally, and it's a wonderful way to honour those who have fallen for, you know, their country, whether it's the UK or any other country in the world. And it's kind of weird that maybe some people don't realise it, but the witches, those of us that witches do realise that it's basically honouring the dead, as is coming to a graveyard and putting things on the graves. And it brings me to reflecting about death, and you know, because death is certain, as is paying taxes. Unfortunately, there's some commotion going on the main road with wagons hooting and the horns and whatnot. I don't know what it is. But yeah, going back to what I'm saying about death and dying and whatnot. I've worked in healthcare as a support worker in the community. Currently not at the moment, because I'm full-time carer for my elderly mum, and I have my own business where I do my Etsy readings and healings. I'm just going to put a side note in here: if you ever want to have a healing or reading session, check out the link on Etsy. I am very reasonable. But that aside, we're digressing. So when I worked as a healthcare worker, I would often go to mainly elderly people, and I would see them dying. Sometimes I'd find them dead. But you kind of knew that was going to happen, because death's a process. The body starts to change in the process of dying. The breathing becomes shallower. There's pausing between the breathing. Oh, picture of Elvis there. Obviously an Elvis fan. Anyway, going back to what I was saying. And yeah, the death is a process. The body changes, the skin colour changes. And I used to observe this in people as they were dying. And one thing I noticed is they were not frightened. There was no fear. I'm frightened of dying. I'm not frightened of being dead, but I am frightened of dying. And even though I watched these elderly people in the process of dying, I never saw anyone die. They're usually dead when I came back. There was no fear. I remember one elderly lady who, maybe a few days before she died, it wasn't long, I think it was the day before she died, actually, maybe, and I'd gone to see her, and I was helping her. She was bedbound by this time, and I said, should we have a wash and get you changed into a fresh nightie? And she said to me, no, I don't want that, because there are two angels standing behind you and the men. Well, I couldn't see anything, but I didn't question what she was seeing, because it was obviously a deathbed visitation. So I said, well, if I turn round and ask them to go away, shall we see if that works? And she agreed. I mean, she was lucid, she wasn't on any medication. And I turned round because she pointed to everyone. I just said, look, can you please leave? This lady has a dignity, and she doesn't want to be washed where her naked body is going to be exposed in front of two men, regardless of whether you're angels. And then I turned back to the elderly lady and asked her, have they gone? And she said no. And I said, to tell you what we'll do. I said, I'm a big lady. I said, I'm a big woman. I'm big in build. I said, so how about I stand between you and them so that they can't see, because I'm blocking the way? And she agreed to that. And so I washed her and changed her nightgown, and she seemed happy with that, but she kept saying the angels were there, but she was happy that I was blocking their sort of view. And that's always stayed with me. And I remember another old lady that was dying, not the same lady I've just spoke about, someone else that kept saying she was I want to go home, I'm going home. So, but they weren't frightened of dying. Now, once you're dead, I mean, I've got to admit I'm on the fence about this, because I've really been uncomfortable with death since I found my husband dead, and that was horrible. Finding a client dead or a service user dead in your job is completely different to finding your spouse dead. It's a completely different thing, because when you're in your job, when you're working, you're in your working mode, and you are expecting it, because you can see the signs. You can see the elderly person fading before your eyes. My husband was 60. He was a few years older than me. His health wasn't great. He had heart problems, and 6 months prior my dad had died, and I did not expect to come home after a 3-hour drive and find my husband dead on the couch. And it's shook my world ever since. And it's taken a long time to heal, because I've had other things going on. Like, shortly after my elderly mum started to fail, and I had to move in with her. So it's been a difficult process, but life throws us curveballs. But going back to what I was saying about actually being dead, my husband didn't believe in life after death. He said, but once you're dead, you're dead. the only immortality you have is through your children. And my father didn't believe in life after death, despite the fact that he was a Catholic, although not a practicing Catholic. My mother does. My grandmother, that's my dad's mum, she didn't. And I'm on the fence. And people say, well, you read tarot and you do healing. And I said, yeah, but I'm working with a living person's energy. You don't do tarot readings and healings for dead people, not really. And I'm on the fence. I don't know whether I believe in life after death or not. The scientist side of me, because I was an archaeologist up until about 15 years ago, and then I packed it in because I wanted to come out of a profession. It wasn't well paid. It was very, very, you weren't treated great, and you're always moving from place to place. But that's not the issue. And that part of me says there's nothing after, because you just go and that's it. You don't, I can't, think about before you were born. Does anybody have any memory of before they were born? We don't. And that might be what it's like when you're dead. And there's nothing scary about that. But on the other hand, there might be something. But as we are born into our physical body, that memory switches off, maybe. Now, I think I have to be honest here and say that what makes the greatest sense to me is reincarnation. That would make the most sense to me as a possibility of some kind of renewal. Because we look at this, for example, looking at this bush, and I think it looks like a hawthorn bush. It's had leaves and the leaves have come off. There's still some leaves on it, but it's becoming bare. Those leaves, each leaf drops off and dies, but then a leaf is reborn on the same twig again in the spring. And that could be akin to what's reincarnation's a bit like. It's like a bulb. You get a bulb, you plant it, and you get like a hyacinth comes out of it. Hyacinth dies, goes through a cycle of death, disintegration, renewal, and that same bulb grows a new hyacinth. So the bulb itself could be akin to the soul, and the hyacinth akin to a body. So it's possible that makes more sense to me than an afterlife, reincarnation. And there's been so many accounts of it. I am a trained regression therapist. I qualified earlier this year, and at weekend I'm doing a quantum regression course as well to qualify in that. So to me, reincarnation makes the most sense, and I just thought I would come on and share that. I've not been on for a while, and I've had a lovely walk. I had a yoga session this morning, and then I came for a walk, and I thought I'd finish off here before going home. So I'll leave you all in peace, and thank you for listening and watching. Blessed be.